What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving my reaction and review of Renny Harlin's horror film, The Strangers, Chapter 3. And just so you guys know, this video will contain spoilers, most definitely. So, if you haven't gotten out to the theater to see this film yet, and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. The Strangers, Chapter 3 is an American-made horror film directed by Renny Harlin. It serves as the fifth film in the Strangers film series and the final installment of a new trilogy following Chapter 1, which was released in 2024, and Chapter 2, which was released in 2025. The film stars Madeline Page, Gabriel Basso, Emma Horvath, and Richard Brake. The Strangers Chapter 3 premiered in Los Angeles on January 15th of this year and was released here in the United States by Lionsgate on February 6th. And at the time of the making of this video, the movie has just a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 38 critic reviews, with its popcorn meter currently sitting at 51% based on over 100 verified ratings. The movie has a Metascore of 24 on Metacritic based on just 8 critic reviews, with a user score of just 3.2 based on only 12 user ratings. And finally, the movie has just a 4.1 out of 10 on IMDb with just over 750 ratings. Now, when I think about this particular film franchise, I can't help but go back to the very beginning, to the very first Strangers film back in 2008 with Scott Speedman and Liv Tyler, which I'll admit had the advantage of being the film that all the subsequent films in the series would be based upon, remake or not. It was the film that had the best performances in it, if you ask me. But then in 2024, we got The Strangers Chapter 1, which has been branded a relaunch or retelling of the story based on the original premise, with all three movies being filmed simultaneously, essentially functioning as a 4.5-hour movie split into 3 parts. I want you guys to keep that in mind. And this makes it difficult to really properly judge what you're watching because essentially each movie is just but one act of the story, instead of being kind of its own entity in and of itself. Now, Chapter 1 was essentially an anxiety-ridden cat-and-mouse game between the strangers who, are trying to kill Maya and Ryan for the simple sin of being there. And Maya and her boyfriend later, her fiance Ryan, in Chapter 2, was a fairly elaborate shell game wherein the filmmakers want the audience to spend a great deal of mental energy trying to guess who's who. And to this point, everything I'd seen having to do with Chapter 3 had suggested that Maya becomes pin-up girl somehow. Mind you, this is before I went to see the movie. So as I walked into the theater, I found myself maybe more interested in a story that to this point had been rather lackluster from a narrative standpoint, but had earned the right to make me. But I was interested nonetheless in how exactly it would be that Maya would manage to take her revenge on the people that had spent the last several hours in movie time terrorizing her. Now, the biggest mistake I think the filmmakers made as a whole when it comes to this trilogy was trying to stretch this story into 3 separate movies, and that decision hurt this movie even more than it did the previous 2. Because this film meandered so much to the point of the plot being destroyed beyond all comprehension. Now, what do I mean by that? So, this movie starts with a flashback, and it's meant to show us essentially what our murderous trio had been up to, prior to Maya and Ryan arriving in Venus. But after said flashback, the movie jumps back to the present, and it picks up right after the last film left off, with Maya standing about 30 or 40 feet from pinup girl's dead body and the Scarecrow and Dollface standing over her. Now, she's standing there watching. I don't know why. I don't know why after the accident at the end of The Strangers Chapter 2, Maya doesn't just get the hell out of Venus. But stay with me if you can. So after the Scarecrow and Dollface pick up pinup girl's body, put it in the back of a truck, and drive off, Maya decides to go for a walk through the woods. But not a walk to leave Venus, a walk to a church where she decides it's a really good time to pluck out a banger on the piano instead of figure out the fastest way possible to get the hell out of town. And while she's in the church, Gregory shows up, looks a little angry. And Gregory, though he doesn't attempt to hurt Maya, he instead pours her a shot and tells her to have a seat. And the two share a drink. And then Gregory asks what's maybe the dumbest question that I've ever heard asked in a horror movie. Gregory, after confirming, in fact, that he is the Scarecrow, I mean, we kind of figured that from The Strangers Chapter 2 that it was him, but here he basically confirms it through dialogue. And he asks Maya, he says, "You killed my friend. Why?" And I remember sitting in the theater going, "Are you kidding me?" You know? And Maya kind of repeats something that Gregory said to her in Chapter 2. Maya goes, "Does there have to be a why?" And my answer is yes, there absolutely positively has to be a why, because if there's no why, then you're wasting my time with this story. Even if the why is just as simple as, I'm a murdering psychopath, right? You have to have a why. But Maya says, does there have to be a why? And then after taking the shot that Gregory gave her, Gregory eventually gets frustrated and tells Maya to get the hell out of there. And so Maya gets up and she leaves the church. Now, when I say meandering, what I mean is I don't understand why Maya would stop off at a church and just kick it until Gregory shows up, right? I also don't understand why Gregory would show up and essentially, I guess, call a timeout on chasing Maya down and killing her, the only person who's ever gotten away from our murdering trio, right? And then, not only does he not kill her in the church, he has a drink with her. And I don't understand why Maya in this circumstance would have a drink, because she needs all her wits about her to get the hell out of town. Does she not? I mean, the whole point of these movies has been for Maya to escape, right? In fact, she spent all of Chapter 2 running from these folks, right? And then Gregory tells her, get the hell out of here. Which, again, makes no sense because Gregory's been hunting her down for 2 movies. Now, after this, Maya runs into Gregory's father, and she doesn't trust the sheriff because the lady who owned the farm in Chapter 2 told her not to trust the sheriff, that he wasn't going to help her. So she tricks the sheriff into stepping out of the police vehicle, and she drives off with it, only to crash the vehicle because I got to tell you guys, Maya might have crashed 10 cars in these 3 movies. But she crashes the sheriff's vehicle, and then Gregory shows up in his Scarecrow mask and simply drags her out of the car again, which lends to me asking the question again, what are we doing here? Did Gregory not have her dead to rights at the church? So why go through all this for him just to grab her up all over again? Gregory's working way too hard here. And this is what I mean about the film meandering, right? And I believe that most of this took place simply because the filmmakers were trying to stretch this movie out so that it would hit the 90-minute mark, right? I firmly believe they didn't have enough story left for an entire movie, so they had to just kind of mark time, if you will. And the 20 minutes or so of this movie in Act 1, that's essentially what this was. The filmmakers simply pausing, simply trying to figure out how to mark time to get 10 or 20 minutes more out of this movie. Now, back to the flashbacks of this movie. There were quite a few of them, much like they were in the last one. And those flashbacks were used here in this film to explain how Gregory became the Scarecrow, who Dollface was, and exactly how Sheriff Rodder was connected to the killings that had been going on in and around Venus for the better part of 15 years or so. But the flashbacks, in trying to connect the past to the present, present so many narrative issues with the plot itself that they wind up doing just as much harm as good. I'll give you an example. In the very first flashback of the movie, Shelley works at a hotel 7 miles outside of Venus. A young lady comes in, checks into room 24, and as she's relaxing for the night, Shelley knocks on the door, and she asks for Tamara. They do that whole thing, and then Shelley just opens the door, comes inside, and essentially kidnaps this young lady, and then the three strangers do away with her in some deep, dark room somewhere. Now, okay, I understand that part, right? But my question then becomes, when you go all the way back to The Strangers Chapter 1, if there's a motel, which is right near a gas station, right off the highway, and Venus is a town that's 7 miles away from there, my question becomes, why in God's name did Maya and Ryan drive 7 miles into Venus when they could have just driven to this hotel? Why go stay at the Airbnb in the middle of nowhere in Venus when you could have just stayed at the motel 7 miles away from Venus right next to the highway? Did you get what I'm saying here? And I guess Shelley just works a bunch of different jobs because in part 1, Shelley's working at the diner that Maya and Ryan go eat at. But here she works at the motel. Now, I suppose this was a few years prior, so maybe, she doesn't work at the motel anymore. But my point is that the screenwriters here are confusing the issue. They're taking a very simple concept and they're making it way, way, way more complicated than it ever had any right to be. And I just didn't get it, right? Now, I thought the casting here was fine enough for a glossy, low-budget horror film. I'm assuming this film cost about $10 million to make or so, just like the other two, so maybe $30 million all in, right? I thought the acting here was serviceable, especially because most of the masked killers, who are kind of the main characters here, don't even talk very much outside of Gregory, who at this point we've seen out of his mask the most over the course of the last two movies. And that means that, especially with Ryan having been dead since the end of the first movie, that this movie was going to come down to whether or not Madeline Page could carry a $10 million film on her back. And I thought she did okay executing what this particular movie required of her, though I definitely think there would have been lots of young, maybe even up-and-coming actresses that could have done just as good a job in her stead. I thought the writing at large here was absolutely positively horrible, because another thing I did not understand about the story is, why did Maya's brother-in-law and sister show up in town with a bodyguard, right? A bodyguard who literally didn't do anything but drive them around and then get murdered expeditiously, right? So the question becomes, if the bodyguard wasn't going to do anything that was going to help change what happened in the film, why was he necessary? Why couldn't Maya's sister and her husband simply show up by themselves, right? Because at the very least, I guess I understand Maya's sister and her husband showing up because Gregory, a.k.a. the Scarecrow, decided to kill both of them. I guess to take more things away from Maya, I guess that's narratively what was supposed to be happening. But what I didn't understand was why Maya just kind of sat there and let it happen. I mean, if the whole point of Chapter 3 is for Maya to essentially get her revenge, I didn't understand why she just kind of sat there and let it happen. And now you could maybe convince me that she's traumatized, but again, like I said, I just didn't get it, because earlier on, when she's forced to don the pinup girl mask and go on this mission with Dollface and the Scarecrow, and when she gets in this motel and they have this couple tied up, as the Scarecrow is killing the guy and Dollface is just standing there holding a machete, Maya takes the opportunity to viciously murder Dollface. So what I'm saying is, clearly Maya's about that action, right? But then she just kind of stands there and allows Scarecrow to kill her sister right in front of her. I don't get it. She didn't even stand still and watch the couple get killed, but she stood there and watched her sister, sat there in the truck and just let the Scarecrow murder her sister right in front of her after he had already murdered her brother-in-law. I'm like, again, I don't understand what we're doing here narratively, because at this point, either Maya's afraid or she's not. You got to make your mind up. And I just don't get it. Then Maya after the Scarecrow gets in the car with his dad and takes Maya's brother-in-law's dead body with them, the Scarecrow just kind of, again, just drives off. So we're going to let Maya go again. Even though we've spent the last 2 movies chasing her down, running her down. We're going to let her go again, right? This is the second time this movie he's just turned her loose. And Maya drives out of town. And then as soon as she gets outside of Venus, she's well on her way, no one's chasing her. That's the moment she decides to turn back and then finally go and kill Sheriff Rodder. And then she does this whole thing where she pretends like she might be in love with the Scarecrow before she finally kills him. And so, again, like I said, I didn't understand what the filmmakers were saying about Maya and her state of mind this entire film. It just didn't make sense. And again, I truly believe that this was because they just simply ran out of movie. And they go, yo, we're making 3 movies. We got to try to stretch this thing out and everything. And I'm going to say this. The whole Maya wearing the pinup girl mask in all of the trailers was simply done to gaslight the audience into showing up at the theaters. Because I want to be honest with you guys, it's the only reason I went to see this movie. Because I was trying to figure out, in all the trailers, she's got on the pinup girl mask. I'm like, does Maya become pinup girl? Like, I'm sitting here going, there's no way in the world that after all that has happened, she just decides to join the crew. I'm like, I can't for the life of me understand how that would take place. And what the screenwriters tell us here is that this happened because Gregory wants her to replace Pinup Girl because I guess they need 3. And so Gregory's just going, you killed my friend. I'm going to force you or try to force you to take her place. But given what's happening, that would never, ever happen. I don't understand why Gregory would make this decision, and I don't understand why Dollface would go along with it. I'm like, what are we doing here? Especially since she's been billed as the only person to have ever survived them. The only person. And if you guys were just going to let her go or let her join the crew, then what the fuck was all the chasing about in part 2 about? Why burn all those calories to just say, hey, you can just come be on our team? And this is all because you've made some deal with your father that you'll only kill people who are not from Venus. And let's be real, Pinup Girl was letting the home team have it all throughout chapter 2. So even that doesn't make any sense anymore. And I guess I'm willing to go with the idea that Pinup Girl is a loose cannon, right? That even though you guys have made this deal, it was essentially Gregory and his dad made the deal, and the whole town's in on it, by the way. You would think that the town would have turned on them when Pinup Girl started giving it to the residents of Venus all throughout chapter 2. Because let's be real, Pinup Girl kills the farm lady, and then Pinup Girl kills the 3 people who live in the big house at the end of chapter 2. So that's 4 people from Venus that just got the business. All because Pinup Girl is just like, anybody can get it. And so much that happens in this film is not consistent. And I always tell people, unless you show me why the characters shift and change course, that's just bad writing. You're confusing the hell out of the audience. But I digress. Now, overall, I'd have to give this movie a 35%. That's a 3.5 out of 10 if you're thinking IMDb score. And I slept on this for a few days, guys, but I gotta say, that's gonna be an F for me for a letter grade. This is the worst movie I've seen this year so far. And I know we're just in February, but still, a 35% means to me that it's probably going to be among the worst movies this year. Now, this movie was really, really bad. And the saddest part about it is that it didn't really have to be. I personally think that the filmmakers, if they had made this into one movie, or hell, I'll even give them that if they had made this into 2 movies, I think that would have been okay. I think this story would have been much better because you would have had to cut out a lot of the back and forth and the nonsense. And you could have simply subtracted a lot of that because you would have had less time to tell the story. But that's not what the filmmakers decided to do here. Instead, what they gave us was a movie that managed to resolve outstanding business for a trilogy that never should have been a trilogy at all. But what do you guys think? Have you had a chance to get to the theater and see The Strangers Chapter 3 yet? If you have, how did you feel about all the ways in which the story meandered here? What did you think about the flashbacks and how they may or may not have confused what started as a rather simple issue? Do you think Maya, as a character, made decisions that made sense for her given her circumstances throughout this film? Were you happy with how the film ended? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. You can also now support the channel by leaving a super thanks. If you should be so inclined, I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, feel free to subscribe to my new reactions channel and shorts channel for additional content. The links will be in the description. In addition to that, be sure to go and check out themaskscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all on the next video.